Hello, everybody, and welcome to our first session of Zoomside Chats. How did she do it? We're delighted to be here today, and we're welcoming people from France and the US and Belgium, I believe. So a big welcome to everybody. So just a little bit about us before we start. We commenced about 5 years ago as Employ Mum, and that's when we kind of heard about Office Mum, who's here tonight. And we connected online, and I suppose we had the same values and the same ideas about flexibility in the workplace, and making room for mums in the workplace as well. So we were Employ Mum for about 5 years, and then we branched out to Employflex last year, and to open up our audience, I suppose, to people who are working who aren't just parents. So we're all about flexible work in the workplace, and I know Andrea as well. She's written many articles about work-life balance. So we ran webinars during COVID to help people, help job seekers, but mainly and remote workers in the times of the pandemic. So we're launching this tonight. And it's just more of a casual chat. A lot of people were coming on. They didn't want to give a webinar, and they just wanted to have a chat with us and tell their story. And we have so many people who want to talk to who have amazing stories. And one of them is Andrea Mara. And I suppose what really, I suppose, attracted us to Andrea's story is that she pivoted in her career massively. So Andrea was a senior finance director, and she was made redundant. She tells her own story now in a minute, but she was made redundant in 2015, and always had an itch to write, and is a brilliant writer. She's won so many awards for her blog and for her writing and her books, and she's on her fourth book now. I've read the other three and love them. Everyone in my family has read them. My daughter has read them. Everybody I know, I tell them all about Office Mum and Andrea, an amazing story. And I'm dying to have time. We've never actually spoken, although we've kind of, semi-stalked each other online. And Andrea has a fabulous blog as well called Office Mum. But enough of my ramblings, and we'll head over and say hello to Andrea. Andrea, you're very welcome tonight.
Thanks, Karen. It's lovely to finally meet you. I kind of felt like I met you that time a few years ago when we were down in Clonakilty, and you were very kindly answering all my questions about where should we go in Skibbereen and Bantry and West Cork and all over the place, and giving me a steer on the good restaurants and everything. But as you say, we've never actually spoken to each other face to face like this. So it's great. Lovely. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Yeah, it's so weird online, isn't it? I mean, you feel like you know somebody even though you haven't met them, and even people who don't even know my existence, like when I see them on the street, I go over to say hello, but I realize actually they don't know me at all. I just know them from looking at them on Instagram or whatever. Yeah, it's a weird world we're living in. Anyway, could take us back to 2015, where you had a career, 17-year-long career in finance. What happened?
So yeah, I better correct one thing, because I wasn't a director. That's a nice promotion. I like the idea of being a director. But anyway, I had worked in financial services for 17 years, and I really liked my job, and I was planning to be there forever. And then I was brought into an office one day, like so many people are, and told, I'm really sorry, but we're moving the work to Luxembourg and India. Would you like to move to Luxembourg or India? I figured my husband mightn't be delighted to leave his job, and the kids might not want to be uprooted to move to Luxembourg or India. So I started, like anybody else, looking around for other jobs and signing up to recruitment agencies. And one of the biggest things, which I guess is a nice irony in the fact that we're chatting here tonight, was flexible work. So I was working a 4-day week in the IFSC, 3 days in the office and 1 day from home. So I had been there for so long, and I had finally got this perfect setup. I had just gone back to work after having my third child, and I was only delighted with myself because I had this really nice balance of time in the office where I could see my colleagues, time at home, working from home while a childminder minded the kids. And then Fridays, I took a day off, parental leave, every week to bring the kids to school
Yeah.
and hang out with the younger ones and all of that. So I possibly tempted fate by being a bit too delighted with the whole thing, because then there you go, the carpet was pulled from under me and I found myself being made redundant. And that was the problem then. Every job I looked at, I couldn't imagine how I would go about getting my nice 4-day week with 1 day at home. Because I mean, we all know now, maybe things have changed a bit in the 6 years since then, but I certainly didn't feel I could walk into an interview and say to somebody, yeah, I'd like to interview for this role. And can I also please just only come into the office 3 days a week? And I suppose we are moving in a good direction. And I guess one small outcome that is somewhat positive of all of this that we've been through over the last year is that perhaps more and more employers are seeing that the work can still get done, even if it's not done between 9 and 5 in an office space. That work can be done at home, that employees can be trusted to work from home, that people, I know I certainly found I got a lot more done on my work from home day than I did in the office, because apart from anything else, you don't have your commute. So I was spending my commute time sitting at a desk working. And then obviously, you tend not to take a full hour lunch necessarily if you're working from home. Although on the flip side, it could mean you might go and do a yoga class and pick up your kids from school and then catch up work later in the night. So all of that, I think, is even more obvious than ever, that it's a good way to work. But in 2015, I didn't think that I could expect that from any potential employer. So I was a little bit lost. And I guess that's how I ended up just unsubscribing from all the recruitment agencies and the job lists. It was really through the inspiration of my career coach that I got to work paid for like outplacement support. And I had a career coach called Dervla Baviera, who was marvelous. So anybody who's listening, who's heard me talk about this topic before, will probably be going, oh, there she goes about Dervla Baviera again. But it was a life-changing connection that I had with her, because she said to me, well, what do you really want to do? Do you want to work in all these jobs that you're looking at? And I said, no, I really would love to be at home, working at my kitchen table, sitting at my laptop, writing for a living, because I had started a blog 2 years earlier, ironically enough, called Office Mum, which it was about working full time as I was at the digital stages and having kids, because I couldn't understand how we were supposed to do this. It felt really, really hard to work full time and have 3 kids. And I thought there must be other people dealing with this. And writing a blog was a way of venting my frustrations at how hard it was and connecting with other people. So I suppose that was my other moment that I tempted fate, was starting a blog called Office Mum, because then the office got taken away. But yeah, Dervla said, what would you like to do? And I said, I'd love to be sitting at my kitchen table writing for a living. And she said, okay, then unsubscribe from all those recruitment agencies and try and make that happen. And it was based on her steer that I'm sitting here 6 years later writing for a living.
Well, it was such a brave move to make, though. I mean, you left behind, I suppose, a career that you had established yourself in for 17 years, and took this giant leap into the unknown, really, for you, really. Did you give yourself a time limit? Did you say, okay, I give this a year, or, what was the thinking, what were you thinking at the time? Were you scared? Were you afraid? Or were you confident that it was going to work out?
Not confident. No, not confident at all. So I gave myself 6 months, and I put all my work clothes in a box in the attic, and I didn't actually get rid of them for years, because it felt like, I'm starting to sound very superstitious, but it felt like, again, it would be a mistake to throw them away, because that would be the day that I discovered this just wasn't going to work out and I had to go back and get another job in financial services. But I wasn't confident, but I just thought I'll give it a try. And there wasn't a huge amount to lose, because at the beginning I thought, if I don't get another job straight away, people lose confidence. People, I am sure you see it all the time,
Yeah.
Karen, with people you meet. If you're out of the workforce for a few years, whether it's because you're looking after children or caring for elderly parents or your own illness or any reason that someone
Mm-hmm.
takes time out, it's very hard to gear yourself up to go back into the workplace and to go back and do interviews. So that's what I was afraid of initially. And Dervla said to me, okay, if you had an interview tomorrow during one of our sessions, if you had an
Yeah.
interview tomorrow, how would you feel? And I said, oh my God, I'd be petrified, because although I had moved roles many, many times within the companies I worked for, I hadn't actually gone for an external interview in 17 years.
Yeah.
So, and she said, okay, well, if you would be petrified going for an interview tomorrow, yeah, you're going to be petrified in a year or 5 years. So what difference does it make? And I was like, okay, she's absolutely right.
Yeah.
The taking 6 months off isn't going to make a big difference in the bigger scheme of things. So I gave myself 6 months. And at the end of that 6 months, I thought, yeah, okay, this is working. I had built up enough freelance writing work. So I was writing for magazines and newspapers. So I suppose taking the topics I had been writing about on the blog, which had gone beyond the working mother topic and more parenting in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I had started writing for, whoever would have me. And I felt after 6 months that I was getting enough work coming in, that, like, God Almighty, nowhere near anything like a salary. Absolutely not. But between, my husband and I had sat down and looked at the figures, and we had figured, like, if I got a certain amount of work bringing in a certain amount of money, between that and not needing childcare anymore, we could make it work. So it was hugely down to his support as well. And he did have a wobble at one stage when my existing employer, a really nice job became available, and they asked me if I'd like it during the process of the run up to the redundancy. And then it became not so much choosing between, the external unknown versus the other external unknown, but like a really nice job being handed to me versus walking away.
Mm-hmm. That
But
was a tough one.
that was the only wobble. And it was the one time that he was kind of like, are you really sure about this? And I just thought, you know what, I've kind of committed my head now to trying this writing thing. And I would think, if I take this other job, I'll always wonder, was it a mistake? Could I have made it work? And realistically, nice and all as the job was, I suppose if I decided to go back into financial services, I probably could have found something somewhat as good somewhere else eventually. So I decided to just take the leap.
Fair play to you. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can underestimate the power of a good coach, actually. We have a panel of coaches that support us here in Employflex, and I've seen the transformational results that they have with people. Everybody, they say everybody should have a coach. I mean, the best people in the world at tennis and basketball and what, they all have coaches, and people at very senior levels do as well. But I think you do need somebody sometimes to help you find the way. I mean, they're not going to tell you. You find that within yourself with a good coach. But you certainly did find a good one by the sounds of it. So, like, how did you start writing the book then? I know you were blogging and you were freelancing, and did you have a book at the back of your head that was screaming to get out, or how did that process start for you?
Yeah, I had lots of little ideas always floating around in my head. I'd be sitting at a video conference at work and watching the video screen, and maybe the meeting might be a bit boring, and my mind would start to wander. And anyone who's heard this before, I'm sorry, because I always use this story, but it's probably a good indication of how it started. And I would start to imagine masked gunmen coming into the Luxembourg office, which was who we were having the video conference with. And I'd be thinking, God, like, which police would we call? Would we call the Irish police, or would we try to get to the Luxembourg police? And the idea of this horror unfolding in front of us on the video screen, and it would be like, 8 feet away, but there's nothing we can do because we're actually in another country. So thinking things like that, but not actually thinking I could turn them into a book until one day a reader of Office Mum had commented on my Facebook page some blog post I'd written. She said, "Oh, did you ever think about writing a book?" And she said, "You should give it a try." So again, maybe a bit like a coach, it was needing the nudge to just go and do the thing that I had really wanted to do, but maybe didn't know I wanted to do or needed permission. So I always think it's an important one, that we should all talk and connect as much as possible and tell people what we, you're not trying to force anyone into doing anything they don't want to do, but you never know when someone just needs the little nudge to take their photography hobby into a semi-career or a sideline career, or to take something they really, really love doing and see, could they open an Etsy shop or whatever it might be, and the business idea that they have, why not actually look into it? And so I'm always grateful. That was Margaret Scott, who I didn't know at the time was an author herself, and she said, "You should write a book." And so I literally started the next day and wrote what I thought was a great book, but it was a terrible book. It was a really, really, really bad book. And but it had bits that could be, it was a practice run.
Yeah.
So in the end, then I learned a bit more about writing and what you do and what you don't do. And I ended up signing a 3-book deal with Irish publisher Poolbeg in 2016. So then I was juggling the freelance writing because I didn't want to give that up, because I had worked so hard to build that up, and that sometimes meant emailing the same editor 6 or 7 times with 6 or 7 different ideas, and just sort of blocking out the idea that they might be looking at the emails going, "Oh my God, it's your one again. She doesn't give up." But actually one lovely editor of a parenting magazine, I pitched her, like, it must have been a 5th idea in 5 weeks. And she came back and she said, "Oh my God, I'm just so relieved we haven't covered this already, because I don't think I could have said no to you again." So it does show the power of perseverance. And I know there's a fine line, I imagine, between annoying someone, but they were different ideas every time. I wasn't chasing the same idea once they'd said no. But yeah, I had worked so hard to build up that freelance writing career. I didn't want to just drop it, and I didn't know if the fiction writing thing was going to work out or not. So that, I remember that time being really, really stressful, trying to meet short-term deadlines for articles and a longer term deadline for the book, because when I signed the deal, I hadn't written the book and I had to write it really, really quickly then. So yeah, that was a really busy time. And then 2 years ago, I kind of realized I couldn't keep going doing everything, and that fiction was what I wanted to do. So I stopped the freelance writing completely and just focused on the fiction. So yeah, I've had three books published now, and the next one's out in the summer. So far so good. And I haven't quite given away all the work clothes, but the biggest box of them is gone at this stage. So I suppose I'm accepting that I'm not going to go back into financial services at this stage.
Fantastic. Now, I know people are going to be very interested in this. So if anybody has any questions, they can pop them in the question and answer box at the bottom, and we'll answer them then after the interview, rather than breaking up the interview as we go along. So if you have any questions, anybody who's listening, just pop them into if you hover over the bottom of your screen, you'll see a question and answer function there. So you can pop them in there, and Andrea will answer them afterwards. So I'm just intrigued to know, like, the publisher to begin with. They took you on just on the basis of your freelancing work, was it? Or how did you hook the publisher to begin with?
I sent them my really bad book, well, like a slightly better version of my not good book. And they told me all the things that were wrong with it. Quite rightly, they were 100% right. But said that they liked my writing style and my ideas in general, even if structurally this book just didn't work. And I've written, just to explain in case I'm being unclear, I'd written it in 2 different genres. So if anyone is an aspiring fiction writer listening to this, I think this is good to know. I had written it as part contemporary domestic noir psychological thriller, part historical family saga. And I think, if you are a multi-million selling author, you can do that, because you can do whatever you want and you'll get away with it. But when you're just starting out and you're a regular person just trying it, you can't really write things in 2 completely different genres. Okay. So I went back and put a lot of thought into a new story, and outlined it and sent it through to Pullback again. And this time they really liked the idea, and so they gave me the publishing deal based on that.
Okay.
And so I had the bones of the story. So this was The Other Side of the Wall, my first book. So I knew exactly who was in the story, what was going to happen. I knew the twist, I knew the ending, I knew everything before I started writing. So at least that was something. But I still had to write the whole book, which is like 100,000 words, which is a lot. It takes a lot of work to do that. So that was a very busy and stressful time. But we got there.
You got there, yeah, yeah. And where did you get your inspiration from? Like I read, I know the One Click. I love that book actually. It's really good. You were on holidays and you saw a lady, and that kind of inspired the idea and went from there. Like, but is it just one thing you might see, or is it, and that sparks the whole story in your head, or how does the process work for you?
Yeah, it's pretty much exactly that. So as you say, with One Click, I saw a woman on the beach and I was going to take a photo of her. And then I kind of thought, God, imagine if I took that photo and there was loads of other people around. So it's not this weird scenario where there's just this me. But I kind of thought, imagine if I took a photo of that woman and put it on Instagram as a nice beach picture. And then somebody, imagine she was on the run or having an affair or something, and someone saw my photo. Because I often think of that when you look at Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all the people who are in the background of photos. And like, imagine if somebody is somewhere they're not supposed to be. Like, even at the moment now, everybody's working from home, and like somebody could be in the background of a photo not at home when they're supposed to be working, and just all those different scenarios that could lead to a problem for the person in the background of the photo. So that was One Click. And then the one that's coming out this summer is called All Her Fault, and it was also prompted by a real life event. So it's about a woman who goes to collect her son from a play date, and her son's never been to this child's house before. And when she goes to the address on her phone to pick up her son, a stranger answers the door, and this person has never heard of her son, so she doesn't know where her son is. And how that came about was I was picking up my middle child from a play date when she was in senior infants, and I knocked on the door and there was no answer, and I was kind of like, oh, it's a bit weird. And when it's like when your kids are small and they're only new in school and you're a bit like precious and you think everybody's trying to kidnap them, but you're like, oh, come on, don't be so silly, let them go on the play date with the person. It's fine, we're all in the same WhatsApp group, it's grand. And then finally a child put their head out of the house 2 doors down and said, oh no, they've moved. And that was all it was. The people had moved house, and I still had their old address from when the list was put together when school started, and I hadn't texted them for the new address. I hadn't realized they'd moved house, so it was fine. I was able to pick her up, but that gave me the idea then for the book. So yeah, it's usually prompted by something in real life.
Okay, very good. Okay, I can't wait for the next one now. So what advice would you have for wannabe writers, and with that, how do you stay motivated all the time? Like, what, how do you discipline yourself to get up, and especially at the moment during lockdown where there's no real structure? I presume you're homeschooling as well. I see in your blog you're struggling along with the rest of us.
Discipline is the key thing. One book I love and I would recommend anyone to read it is Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And the things she says in it about trying to do anything creative is, and to succeed with anything creative, is that you need talent, luck, and discipline. And you can't control talent. I mean, you can certainly hone talent, you can work, you can practice whatever it is you do, but you can't really ultimately control it. And you absolutely can't control luck, but you can control discipline. And I think discipline can be a superpower. So if you say in whatever your job is or your thing in life that you want to do or you want to do better, you can just say, I am going to do this every day, or I'm going to do this 5 days a week, or I'm going to set my alarm and get up an hour early and do this. Or I'm going to, like when I was freelancing first, I used to do it at night after the kids went to bed because I had no choice. My youngest was still at home. He hadn't started preschool yet. So he was a handful, and I had him all day, and then the other two. And so I used to sit down at like maybe 7:30 at night and say to my husband, okay, please, you need to just focus on the kids now, and I need to do this. And I'd sit there from 7:30 till 10:30, absolutely exhausted, but determined to get the work done. And then even when I started to have a couple of hours in the morning when he started preschool, I still hung on to that nighttime time, because I kind of felt like, well, I've carved out this time now, I don't want to let it go. So I was really like religious about getting that time every day, morning and night, to get work done and build up the freelancing work. So I think it's the same for writing novels. If you want to do it, you have to make yourself right, and you just have to sit down and do it. And I think a lot of people, quite understandably, spend a lot of time thinking about what they might write and writing notes in notebooks, which is a good idea. Always write notes, always write ideas in notebooks, and thinking about maybe what genre they want to go for and who they might pitch it to and all of that. But none of that is any good if you don't just sit down and write the words or type the words, whichever way you're going to do it. And if you've never written fiction before, I think you just have to sort of break the seal and sit down and write those first words, because it feels really weird to do it at first. You feel, if you haven't done it since school, you kind of feel a little bit self-conscious and a bit silly doing it. But if you just tell yourself, this is for nobody, no one ever has to read this, because this is just my first go at this and it's just for me, then you can free yourself up to do it. But you just have to go and sit down and write the words. That is the only way to do it. And definitely read a lot. And you have to be reading if you're writing. I know some authors who read a lot, and then when they're deep into their own book, they kind of stay clear of reading in their own genre, because they don't want to be comparing. They don't want to be worrying that they're going to be influenced by the book they're reading. But every author I know reads extensively all the time. So you have to write and you have to read. Those are the main two things that you absolutely have to do. I definitely want to put together a blog post at one stage, at some point when I have a chance, on the more kind of technical details of the A to Z of the whole thing. Like, once you've written it, what do you do next? Like, how to go about submitting to an agent and all that kind of stuff. And like, if anyone listening is at a stage where they have something written and they want to know what you're supposed to do next, definitely email me or message me. My email address is on my website, OfficeMum.ie, and I can let you know what you need to do next. But in terms of someone who's just starting out and has never written anything before, it's just sit down and start writing.
Get writing. Yeah, that's very generous of you. A very generous offer of you. Thanks a million. What is it? 10,000 hours. I think, if you do anything for 10,000 hours, you're going to be an expert at it. Like, so it's just about sitting down and starting, really, isn't it? And I suppose the blog really helped you then as well, didn't it? I mean, like, it's like writing, like anything else, it's like a muscle, isn't it? The more you use it, the more easier it gets. Like, would that be right?
Definitely. Yeah. And like, it kind of, for me, it started with Facebook groups, because I joined parenting Facebook groups, and I had never really used Facebook before. And I had my first smartphone, and it was all fierce, exciting and new. And I was on Twitter, and I was like, God, this is great. And I guess, we went from being people who talk to each other to people who write messages to virtual strangers in Facebook groups and on parenting forums. And you're comparing notes with a mom from Roscommon who you've never met about how to deal with your baby who keeps waking up 10 times a night. And it's a completely different way of communicating than anything I had ever done before anyway. And I think that extended then into writing longer thoughts and feelings about parenting on the blog. But yeah, I would definitely recommend, if anyone wants to try writing and is ready for other people to read what they're writing, a blog is a great way to do it. And you can do it anonymously. I started out anonymous because I wanted to keep, I was writing about work and parenting and balancing it all, and I was working in financial services, and I wasn't writing, oh my gosh, I mean, I never wrote anything negative or bad about work, but at the same time I wanted to keep the two things separate. So like, even when I joined Facebook, I joined as Andrea Mara. Mara is my husband's name, because I was trying to like hide from work, and I didn't want my work colleagues knew me as Andrea Fitzgerald, and I wanted to keep it very, very separate. And blogging was a great way, though, to just let off steam, but to try out different styles of writing and different voices. And sometimes you're in a, you know, kind of flippant mood, and you're sort of having a wry take on things, and that they're feeling more sentimental. And it's a really good way of trying things out. And if you start a blog, and if you choose to start anonymously, the nice thing about that is you can build up your habit, you can build up your content, and then at some point you might decide that you like to share it with the world, and you can go and do that. And it's a really, really good way to practice writing, and it's free. It doesn't cost anything to set up a blog. So
great advice. And do you enjoy the promotional side of it then, Andrea? Do you enjoy going out to sell your book as such, and going to bookshops and
like
that side of it?
I do. I like going to bookshops, and I think it's very hard for authors bringing books out in the last year, because they can't do any of that. Your bookshops aren't even open now. There's so many new books published all the time, and none of that can happen. But yeah, I like it. I do like going into bookshops, and I still get such a thrill when I see my books on a bookshelf. Like, I don't know if that novelty ever wears off, but I still take photos if I'm in a bookshop and I see my book on a shelf. And I love doing the signing and meeting the booksellers. And I think, the harder part maybe is social media. Like, I love social media, and I really enjoy using all the different platforms. But you can feel, if it's coming up to publication time, you can kind of feel, oh God, I can't get away with doing another post about the book. No, I need to just leave it for a while. And like, I don't think I am as good. Well, look, you know, there's pros and cons to promoting. I think people might get tired of it if I was doing it constantly. So the social media side's a bit harder, I think.
It is hard to get the balance right, I suppose. But I think you do it very well, though. Like, you're very relatable, you know, and you always have a good kind of a sense of humor around your posts as well, which you know, makes everybody loves that, especially in Ireland, like a bit of crack, like, you know.
It's all
I know we don't ask for much, like a bit of crack. And how do you feel about being an influencer now, Andrea? Like, because you've influenced my colleague Helen Walsh to change her whole skincare. She came in there recently. She was like, "Oh, have you got an OfficeMum? Tell her now that she made me change everything," and she's delighted. She's watching here now, I think, and so you're got influential status there now. How do you feel about that?
I've been influencer before, but I'm only delighted. That's great.
So listen, where can people buy your books, Andrea?
Like, at the moment, obviously it's all online. So for people who like print books, you can get them in Eason's, you can get them in Dubray. A lot of the bookshops are doing online orders. Gutter Bookshop, Kenny's.ie, they're all selling print copies of books. And then obviously for people who like Kindle, there's Amazon there for anybody, and like, they do print books as well too. But I suppose we're all trying to support the local bookshops if we can, for the print books in this awful time for them. It's just horrendous for all of them.
So look, we're going to move on to a rapid fire list of questions, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
And then we'll see what question and answers we have in our from the attendees here. Okay. So, the best book you've ever read?
Life After Life by Kate Atkinson.
Okay. I never heard of that one. Now I'll have to write that one down. So a good book to gift to someone else.
Oh, do you know what? It's I'm gonna get the title wrong. The one, the boy and the mole and the horse. One. I got that for my daughter when she was starting secondary school just a few months ago, and oh my gosh, I'm sure loads of people have it already and have looked through it. But that's a book for everyone, isn't it? It's just absolutely gorgeous.
I've gifted that to a few people as well. I just love it. It's a book that every household, I think, should have, you know, and it's for every age, like from 3 to 93, isn't it? Okay, your favorite author?
Oh, well, I love Kate Atkinson, who I just mentioned, but she's not writing fast enough at the moment. I need a new book by Kate Atkinson. I love, Taylor Jenkins Reid, who wrote Daisy Jones and the Six.
Don't know that one either.
Yeah, oh my God, that was one of my favorite books of, was it last year or the year before? The year before, and she has a new one coming up in this May, I think, called Malibu Rising, which seems really, really good. So, like, you sometimes see people asking who's an author you would buy their book without even reading the blurb, and I would say, although I've only read 2 of her books, Taylor Jenkins Reid is probably that
Okay.
one.
Okay, great. Best family holiday?
Oh, Italy, campsite. I just desperately want to go back to Bella Italia on Lake Garda in Italy now. We have it booked for August, but we'll see what happens.
Oh God, fingers crossed, yeah. Favorite Netflix show?
Oh, Schitt's Creek for sure.
Really? Yeah, I like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Mental. Lark or owl?
Owl. Yeah. Yeah. My sisters met to go for a walk on Killiney Hill at 7 o'clock this morning, and I was just like, they're amazing, but there is absolutely no way I can set my clock for 6:30 and get up. And so I'm there sitting saying, people, set your alarm clock and get up and do some writing, but not doing
it. It happens in the evenings for you. What is something you have since childhood?
Oh God, well, I have a blue teddy bear that I had when I was 2. So it's in my dad's house. I don't have it here in this house, but that's probably the only thing I have. Yeah.
What's your superpower?
Discipline, I think. Yeah.
Sounds like it. All right. Fair play. What's the best thing about lockdown for you?
Good. I like Friday afternoons in lockdown when there's no play dates. That sounds really mean, but sometimes, I don't know, for people with primary age kids, Friday afternoons can be a bit hectic, rushing around, picking people up and dropping people off. I quite like, because I usually finish up work around 2 o'clock, and just having the afternoon and the evening and having a lazy dinner that doesn't really involve cooking. And so I quite like Friday afternoon into Friday evening on lockdown, but
yeah,
the rest of it, not.
Groundhog Day. Red or white?
Red. Red.
And I know this is one that's going to be hard for you now, Andrea. Cake or cheese?
Oh my God. One of my kids asked me that the other day, if I had to do without one for the rest of my life. And I said I would do without cake because I couldn't do without cheese. I'm not sure I mean it, but I'm going to go with that.
Excellent. That was brilliant. Okay, look, we'll just pop in and see if there's any questions here, Andrea. And okay. Another book for the summer. Great. Someone is saying there. Yeah, great. Interested to know about your writing routine. Do you do a certain amount each day, and how long does it take to do the first draft?
Good question. Yeah. So I do try to do a certain word count every day, but obviously at the moment, because of homeschool, I'm letting myself, if I can do anything at all, it's a bonus. On a day when the kids go to school and I write while they're at school, I have 4 hours in the morning, which is actually really good, compared to when they were smaller and only in preschool. And so I would be aiming to go for 1,500 words a day, and I'd really secretly be hoping to get over 2,000 if I could. And then, the book that's coming out this summer, All Her Fault, I wrote it really fast because I was looking for an agent at the time, and I wanted to get a book written so that I could submit to an agent. And we were living in my dad's because we were house hunting at the time. And I suppose maybe because we were in my dad's, I was less likely to go wandering around the house and putting on washes and stuff. I just used to sit at the dining room table and write and write and write. So I wrote that book really quickly in about I'd say 3 months, the first draft. Whereas the 5th book that I've just finished, the first draft, took over a year to write, but there was a pandemic and homeschool and all of that in the way. So I guess there's no kind of single answer. It depends on what's going on. But I do find I do find writing fast is best for me. And I know Maeve Binchy is often quoted. She gives lots of wise words on writing. And that was one of the things she said, just write fast. And I do think if you're really immersed in your story, and I would say this probably is true for crime fiction, I would think if you're writing literary fiction, writing fast is not what you're doing, but this is about crime fiction that I'm saying it. I think you just get into your story and you're thinking really fast about what's happening and you're writing fast. And I think that probably does help with the pace of the book. Whereas if it's spread over a long period of time, you'd lose track of what you're doing. And, you're writing for an hour and then going off to homeschool for a few hours. And then, another whole day goes by and you come back to it and you don't even know what you were talking about anymore.
Where was I? Yeah.
A lot harder if it's done more slowly, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Write fast. Okay. Did you do a book proposal? From anonymous attendee is asking, did you do a book proposal and have this accepted before you finished your first book?
Yeah, so I wrote an outline for a story for Poolbeg and they gave me a publishing deal based on the outline. But I think that usually, like if you're trying to get an agent or a publisher, they would normally expect you to have the full book written. This was probably an unusual situation because I had already sent them a full book, which they didn't want. But as I was saying at the start, they did like the writing style, and we'd had a lot of to and fro and a lot of discussion about ideas. So I think that's probably why they were open to going with an outline. But usually if you're trying to get a publisher or an agent, they'd expect you to have the full book done. Celebrities are the exception in that situation. Celebrities don't have to have the full book done. Yeah. The rest of us do.
Normal people. Did you have a literary agent then? Somebody is asking, or?
So I do now. So when I first signed with Poolbeg, I didn't have an agent. Poolbeg are a publisher who will accept submissions directly from aspiring authors, whereas some publishers mightn't do that. They might only accept submissions from literary agents. So for anyone who may be wondering about it and doesn't know the process, so the normal thing would be that you write a book or a manuscript, as you might refer to it, and you go querying agents. So you would look up all different agents who represent the kind of book that you're hoping to have published, and you contact them, and each of them will have a website where they give their submission requirements, and some of them will want 50 pages, some will want 10,000 words, some will want the first 3 chapters, and you have to follow precisely what they want. Do they want the text copied in an email, or do they want a Word doc? Do they want font size 12 double spaced? You have to absolutely do what they say on their website, and you submit to all the various agents. Some of them will then may ask you for a full manuscript. So that just means they like what they've seen in your first 3 chapters and they want to see the full manuscript. So you wouldn't want to have to turn around to them then and say, oh, actually, I haven't written that full manuscript. You'd want to have the full thing done. Now, I have heard of people kind of getting away with just really quickly finishing off a book when an agent asks for the full manuscript. But I think to take pressure off yourself, it's probably better to have it done and have it looking as good as you possibly can before you start sending it off. And then what the agent does, if they take you on as a client, it is the agent who then goes and submits to publishers. So they'll know which publishers might be interested in your kind of book and your kind of writing. So they do all that work, and they do all the negotiation, the contract negotiating, the money stuff, all that kind of thing. So you don't have to have those awkward conversations. So agents are really good in that respect.
Okay. And would you recommend an agent? Somebody's asking here. Yeah.
Yeah, like I do think it's good. I really do think it's good to have an agent. You don't have to. And some big writers, as far as I know, Donal Ryan doesn't have an agent. So not every successful author has an agent. And so they get 15% of everything you earn. And that's a flat industry-wide rate. And so, there could be people who are very savvy, who know exactly what they're doing, who know how to read a literary contract and don't need an agent. I think probably the vast majority of us do need an agent, and it is easier to have an agent. Yeah.
Okay. And you don't have to pay them anything until you actually get Selected by somebody. Okay.
And if an agent was asking you for money, run a mile, because
Okay.
they would. How it works then is that when your advance comes through, if you're getting an advance, not every publisher pays an advance these days, or your royalties are coming through, they go from the publisher to the agent. The agent takes their 15% and they forward the rest on to you. So they're only ever taking a cut of what you've earned. They should never be asking you for money, and no publisher should ever be asking you for money either. There are vanity publishers who will, now, I mean, it's different if you have a book. Like someone I know wanted to publish a book about her childhood, and she didn't want to sell it or have it in bookshops or anything. She just wanted copies of this book to pass around to relatives, which was a lovely idea. So she was happy to pay for that to be done. But like, in a way, that's nearly like getting, it's nearly like a photo book printed.
Yeah.
That's not having a book published that you would expect to see in shops. So if a publisher is asking you for money, that's definitely an indication that it's a vanity publisher, and that's not the person who'll get your book into a bookshop.
Okay, fair enough. All very interesting and news to me. So Dur is saying, great interview and so refreshing to hear someone make the leap from a so-called steady job to a creative one. So well done and very admirable. And his question is, do you find it hard to switch from writing factually for your blog to fiction writing for your books? And they're very different.
No, I don't, because I think because the blog is only ever really whatever comes into my head. And so it's not difficult so with the blog posts, unless it's something like the skincare one that your friend Helen read and took on board, which is quite structured, and they're sort of hard work, because you need to go, okay, I'm going to have to get photos of all these skincare products and write up what I thought of each one. But a lot of my blog posts are just something that came into my head. And so it's almost just like an outpouring of what's in your head on any given day. Much more so now when my kids were smaller and when every day was a mystery. And I was kind of going, homework is really hard, when my started junior infants. And oh my God, it was true about lunchboxes. Lunchboxes are impossible and all those things. Whereas now my kids are 13, 11 and 9. So, there's less of that unknown stuff that you would talk about to do with weaning and all that stuff.
Yeah.
A lot more about like things that you're not even going to put in a blog, because it's just like teenagers and internet and phones and all that kind of stuff that you're dealing with. So no, I don't think I find it difficult to switch, because writing the fiction is kind of the hard work one, and the blog is the easy one, because it's just whatever comes into your head.
Almost like a diary, really, isn't it?
Exactly.
Okay, another anonymous attendee. I love your bravery and well done for following your dreams. I would love to pivot career as I've been made redundant. And what would be your main tip to gaining confidence to following a dream?
So I think if you can get a coach, it would be great. They're not cheap. I was very lucky that my work paid for it. If your work who are making you redundant have any kind of outplacement support, look at getting a career coach, because they are amazing. And if you're in Dublin, Dervla Baviera is amazing. And
you're on commission there, aren't you?
as Karen said earlier, they don't tell you what to do, but they have a way of teasing out what you really want to do, and then you say it out loud and you go, oh my God, that's what I want to do. And I think if you're being made redundant and you have a passion, I know we overuse that word, but it's something you really love doing and you'd like to make a go of it, I think you got to sit down and look at the money side of it. Like if you're getting a package, that obviously can be a great way to give you a cushion so that you can try your new thing. You might want to do what I did and set a deadline. You might want to try and do it as a kind of a part-time or a sideline type thing to test the waters. I mean, it depends on whether it's the kind of thing like turning your hobby into something that earns money, or actually setting up a small business, which would be a whole different venture that would obviously require a lot more kind of research and sitting down and doing the sums. But I think there's no kind of quick win. You do have to just sit down, and I did all that. You sit and you look at the figures, and you look at the dates, and you look at the pros and the cons, and look at the risks. Like if you don't take a job similar to the one you have already, is that okay? Maybe it is okay. Can you manage it financially? Then that is your chance to springboard off and do something completely different. I suppose it's hard to answer without knowing what the thing is that you would like to do. But one thing I will say is, time and again at the school gate, with real life friends and online, I've seen so many women in particular who've been made redundant and taken it as an opportunity to go and do something else. And I think obviously we live in a society where it's still very much, the onus is still felt by men to be the breadwinners. We know that. We know they are not supposed to feel that way, but they do. And I think it's hard for a man in some respects if he's made redundant. Like, I know if my husband was made redundant tomorrow, he would immediately go and try to find a replica job of the one he has today, and he would feel like that it's his responsibility to pay the mortgage and that he absolutely has to do that. Whereas I had been at home for 3 maternity leaves already, and I was already doing a 4-day week instead of a 5-day week, and I could get used to the idea of not getting another full-time job in financial services much more easily than I think he would have done in the same situation. I felt much more open to trying something new. And maybe that's a luxury that we have in some respects, that, no, luxury is probably the wrong word, but a kind of an openness that we have, that we can go, no, I think I could actually take a chance on this. I could try doing something different. And so many women that I've met, friends, schoolgate, online, have used redundancy, or also having taken time out to look after small kids, use those two things as a crossroads and a chance to do something completely different. And it might be that someone worked in marketing but became an SNA, or became a teacher, or became a yoga instructor. Or one mom from my school is now coaching volleyball. She had this really high-powered marketing job, and now she's a volleyball coach, and that's her passion. She absolutely loves volleyball, and now she's not doing it now because the schools are closed, but she was coaching volleyball in schools. So redundancy can be a brilliant chance to try something new, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said it there really, but you have to be practical as well. It all sounds great, following your dream or whatever, like, but really you have to pay the mortgage and the bills as well. So you have to take all of that into account. And hope for the best, I suppose. Okay, I'm just getting 9 the time, so we're going to wrap it up at the hour. So we have 5 minutes left. Loads of questions coming in. So we'll keep going if that's okay with you, Andrea, until the hour is up. Is that okay? Okay, so my daughter would love to write books and has been writing her own little ones for a few years, and now she's almost 12. What advice would you give a young girl who knows what she really wants to do since she was very young?
Keep doing it. That's amazing. That's absolutely brilliant that she's writing books at such a young age. And I think, like, as she heads into her teens now, this is really a time that everyone can get distracted by the internet and the sort of teen world. So if you can keep her going with writing books through her teens, that would be amazing. And obviously a lot of people end up not writing books and being published until a bit later, like in their 30s, 40s. I was 44, I think, or so. I think I've just aged myself there. No, I think I was 42. Anyway,
lockdown does that to you.
But like, there are, like, Claire Hennessy is an example I can think of, who's an Irish author, and she was really, really young when her first book was published. I think early 20s. So it's unusual, but it can happen. But like, the best way to do it is keep at it, keep writing and writing and writing. And as Karen, as you said earlier, it is a muscle. So nothing you write ever goes to waste. And it just sharpens and uses that muscle, so you get better and better and better. And I'm sure your daughter will, like everybody, changes their mind about what they want to do, and when they grow up, and she might want to do something completely different. But the brilliant thing is that writing is always something you can do on the side, you can come back to. mean, most writers I know, at least to begin with, had a job, like a day job. There aren't really many people I've ever heard of who just went straight from school to being a writer, or straight from school to college to being a writer. It doesn't pay enough money to allow people to do that. So most people, when their first book was published, tend to be either working already in a day job that really pays the bills, or perhaps they have a partner who is able to support them. Tends to be one of those two things, because writing doesn't really pay a lot of money.
Okay, from Louise, do you plan out your plot in detail in advance, or do you wing it and make it up as you go along?
I plan it out in great detail, because I have to know what's going to happen. My biggest fear would be to write 100,000 words of a crime novel and get to the end and go, oh my God, I have no idea who committed this murder, and have to come up with, when sometimes you're watching a film and you're like, oh, come on, they just went, or anyone who watched Lost for 7 years, and that last episode of Lost, when they just tied it all up in the most nonsensical way imaginable. And you could just imagine the writers sitting there going, we don't know how we got here, and we have no way out of this. So, a bit like, let's just say it was a dream, that kind of thing. That's my biggest fear, is getting to the end and not knowing how to end it. So I will always know the ending before I start writing the beginning, but it changes hugely along the way, and that's fine. Like, it doesn't matter how much it changes, as long as I know the kind of the main path,
the direction. Yeah. Okay. And do you do a lot of research for your fictional books, or is it all made up?
All made up. Like, I feel lucky in a way, because like people who write historical novels have to do a lot of research, but I think they like doing the research, so that's okay. Nicola Cassidy is a friend of mine who writes brilliant historical novels, and she does a huge amount of research, and you can see it in her books. They're so authentic, like you're living in the era in which the book is set. But I would I look at Wikipedia if I need to know something, and it's a great procrastination tool, because you certainly do need a certain amount of research, like checking if a body is found in water, like can the autopsy tell that the person drowned or not, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you can get lost down a Wikipedia rabbit hole. And if I know someone in a particular job, like I have my friend Sinead Fox, who is a solicitor, and she answered lots of questions for me about solicitors for all her fault, because the characters are solicitors. So stuff like that. But other than that, no major research. No.
Okay. It's all made up. People are saying here, you are an influencer because you are to blame for some of the cake that you're posting. Your cake and vino posts are influencing people to drink tea cake. And is saying that we need more books from you, and can't wait for your next book in the summer, and hope that you do a virtual book launch. Well, that is possible, is it?
Yeah, I guess I was at Liz Nugent's virtual book launch for the UK version of Our Little Cruelties tonight. So that does seem to be the new thing, that it's on Zoom, and sure, look, it's grand.
Needs must.
Yeah.
So just the last question, so we'll finish up there. Would you have considered yourself as somebody creative before you started writing books? Good question.
No, I really wouldn't. And sometimes I feel a little bit bad when I hear authors talking about how they were writing books their whole lives, and writing stories, and always scribbling away on the side. And I think, oh my God, should I make up some kind of a backstory where I was like always writing? I was working in financial services. I was on spreadsheets every day and having 3 kids. And so, no, I wasn't doing anything creative. But I would say the kind of stories like would be rattling around in my head, almost more in a kind of, oh my God, what if I went to collect her from the play date and the people had kidnapped her? So more like fear things than anything else. But now I've found a way to turn those kind of scary thoughts into books. So it's a good way of getting them out of the system as well.
Well, I imagine you're pretty inquisitive by nature. Like, I can imagine you sitting outside in a cafe, like looking at everybody and imagining stories about them, and me.
You mean nosy, and that's okay. My kids are like, you are the nosiest person. But yeah, I love when you can't help but overhearing a conversation in the coffee shop and that kind of thing. It's lovely. I miss that about
Yeah,
lockdown. You know, that you
yeah,
can't
yeah.
eavesdrop in the coffee shop, but sure, we'll be there again.
We will, hopefully soon. Yeah, yeah. Listen, that was fantastic, Andrea, and thanks a million for sharing all that with us. I know there was a lot of wannabe authors on here today, so I think you've given them a lot of food for thought and inspiration as well. So thanks so much for giving us your time. And we can't wait for your next book. And we'll be the first out to buy it. We've got a great bookshop down here in Clonakilty. I'll give them a shout out. Kerr's Bookshop. They're fantastic, and they always get the books in that we want. So we'll be looking forward to that. And just to let everybody else know that next week we'll be up with Keela from Dunoan House. She's another lady who did a massive career pivot, and she gave up her career in Dublin and moved down to West Cork and opened a luxury holiday destination there a couple of years ago. So we'll be having a chat with her and hearing about her story in Zoomside Chats next week. So thanks everybody for coming. Thanks for all your questions. Great to have such an interactive crowd. And Andrea, again, thank you so much. Lovely to meet you, and very best of luck going forward.
Lovely to meet you finally, Karen, and thanks everyone for coming along and for the really lovely questions and comments. And yeah, hopefully see some people in real life eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. We look forward to that. Thanks, Will.
Okay, bye.
Bye, everybody.